Jim Bearden, thanks for joining us on the Illinois channel. You wrote the book, The Relentless Search for Better Ways. What is it about, and why did you write it?
The book is about, in short order, winning. It's a book about organizational dynamics, and more specifically about collaborative process designed to improve internal processes in organizations.
And what kind of an organization would gain from the book?
Any organization that is cognizant of the fact that there are external factors that impact their success, and who recognize that improving their internal processes is the remedy or the means by which they can deal with those changes.
Now, we have had many efficiency gurus over the years. What does your book bring to the table that maybe some of those books had not?
Well, not being familiar with all of the efficiency gurus' works, I couldn't tell you specifically. Let me just say that efficiency, while absolutely important, effectiveness, I think, is a different matter and at least equally important. So I would say that rather than focusing so much on efficiency, mine focuses more on effectiveness, improving the effectiveness of internal processes.
Everyone knows that over the last 10 years, we have had a revolution in technology.
Oh, yeah.
To what extent, if you're an organization, how do you ride that technological tiger, know what's out there, and integrate that into your organization?
It's funny that you would ask me a question about technology, because I'll confess to being something of a dinosaur. But I would say that your premise that there has been a technological revolution and that there is tremendous potential in harnessing the power of technology, both are accurate, I think. And so my intent with the book is to encourage and provide specific means by which people, primarily in leadership positions, can recognize or acknowledge the potential in things like technology, and then harness it using internal dynamics, collaborative process to try to figure out in what areas could we benefit the most from more technology, and then what specific things should we do to harness that power.
Anyone who's been in management knows there is a phenomenon called "we never did it that way before."
Oh yeah.
How do you get people to adapt to a new and better way of doing something?
Well, it's a challenge. I think that there is a tremendous, I won't say addiction, but certainly almost reverence for the status quo. And I think a large part of that, Terry, is because people are so uncomfortable with the prospect of making change. So I think incumbent in the role of the leader as an agent of change is to draw people into the process, not just of implementing decisions the leaders made, but of actually participating in the decision-making process. For example, asking people, what processes do you think may be working well for us now, but you think could work better, and what ideas do you have about how we could modify those processes to do it? So I think it's one thing if employees are expected simply to be implementers. I encourage in the book and in my speaking, I encourage people in leadership positions to include employees not only in the implementation, but the creation and fine-tuning of these alternatives.
And you have on the cover of your book, it says the happily ever after cycle.
Right.
What is the happily ever after cycle?
and the happily ever after cycle is a heavy burden, believe me. I see that as a phenomenon that's alive and well, and frankly, I see it as possibly one of the most significant and insidious barriers to achieving and sustaining success. In the short form, the happily ever after cycle is this notion that somewhere, somehow, some way, we will find the happily ever after, and then you fill in the blank. Maybe it's a job, maybe it's a spouse, maybe it's a process. But the point is, if we engage in this frantic search for something that we feel like will work forever and ever, amen, we are depriving ourselves of the steps that we need to take to actually achieve success. The way I sum it up is happily ever afters don't just happen. That's not to say we can't be happy, but it means that happiness or success are more a function of choice than they are of chance.
And how would you measure success?
That's a good question, and it is a question that needs to be answered by each individual and each organization, regardless of the discipline or the industry. I think there are different measures of success. For example, if we are working to fine-tune or improve the quality of the culture, the measures of success would be the behavior of the people working in that culture. If we're looking to improve our sales effectiveness, then clearly the number of orders that we're getting as opposed to the number of orders we got before. I don't think all success or measures of success are easily quantified. As a matter of fact, one of the points that I make in my leadership development work is we need to honor efforts and progress in the early stages of most endeavors without paying much attention to the results we're getting, because quality effort almost always precedes quality performance.
And I would say if you want to keep quality people, it's a subjective judgment if people are happy in their jobs, right?
Well, it's subjective in that they are the ones who determine the happiness. Back to that happily ever after cycle. The mistake that I think a lot of people make is that it is the responsibility of the job or the boss to make them happy. And that's simply not the case. There certainly are jobs we can be happy performing. There is no such thing as a job that's going to make us happy. And I think people need to get their arms around that distinction.
And
what was in the new sweatshirt we had today?
Are there industries in which this approach applies more than others, or is it pretty much across the board?
I think it's across the board. I will say in the last 2 or 3 years, I've done a lot of work with professional educators or in the education arena. Board members, administrators, even faculty and staff. You know, I think the stakes determine the relevance of this approach. The stakes in public education are extremely high. So I think this approach is very important to public education. There are many others for which I think it is applicable, relevant, and important, but I think the stakes in public education make it extremely important.
Do you have a website if people want to learn more about it?
We do. It's www.jimbearden.com is our website.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Terry.
You're watching the Illinois Channel, an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois.